So hello, thank you again for joining us. If you're just joining us now and missed the networking sessions that were pretty awesome. Again, I'll start from the top. This is the inaugural event for Next San Diego, virtually of course, as we are in pandemic mode still for anyone watching this in the future. So that'll be really fun context. We are into our second lockdown in California, in San Diego, again for context. So again, reminding this is being recorded. This will be posted on YouTube on A Stellar Coast channel. Again, thank you so much for all of your support. I forget the exact number, we've raised something like over $300 in donations from all of you collectively, which is, yeah, thank you, huge. That will pay for our online tools for our community, I think for at least the next 6 months, if not a year, especially our Mighty network, which we just launched a couple weeks ago. So that will pay for our premium features and hopefully, a website, a Zoom account, all these great things to keep the community connected. And before we get started into the panel session, I just wanted to very quickly share my screen to kind of show you our reciprocity networking wall. So I'm going to post the link in the chat. Take this with you. I will also email it after the event for anyone who couldn't make it or lost the link. So we have a list of all of our community partners, what they're about, kind of what's coming up for them. And then we also have obviously our beautiful panelists here and the good part, which is the give and get activity. So I have some instructions here. If you've never done one of these before, it's basically a Google Sheet. I assume most of you have used that. And here, you're going to say like, what can you offer to the community? What you would like to get from the community. And anyone who wants to connect can place their name and contact info there and get in touch after the event. And so we're going to have this going on for the next 3 days. So finish it tonight after the event. And then tomorrow, that'll give everyone opportunity to go through everyone else's portion. And then Friday, you can see who your new connections are, and don't forget to actually contact them. And it's usually expected of the getter to contact the giver. And then I think that's about it for sharing stuff. And then also in there, we also have our coffee meetup coming tomorrow at noon. It's every other Thursday for Next San Diego, regenerative entrepreneurs. Just a little bit more casual, a little bit smaller, format than this. We have, I think, 34 people now joining us tonight. So that's a new thing for us. We'd love to have you come, hear about what you're doing in your business, or, whether you're a business owner or not, and just kind of learn more about what you're doing. So with that, why don't we get into introductions for the panelists? How about let's start with Mavis.
Hello everyone, I'm Mavis Carolina Herrera, and I'm the founder of Maddies Viara, where we do bags and everything is made out of recycled and upcycled materials. And it takes 5 days to make one of the bags. And behind a bag, each bag, we have a purpose. So everything we do is with a meaningful purpose. We give back, we make sure we're sustainable, recycle, and ethical. I'm Mavis, I'm the founder, and I had 12 years in experience in international business. I have a passion for outdoors and nature, and that's how I came up with making bags out of recycled plastic materials.
Thank you so much for being here, Mavis. Yeah, if you can't see Laurel, maybe on the YouTube you can't see this because we're doing active speaker mode, but Laurel is showing off all of her Mavis by Herrera collection, which is a beautiful collection. I'm very jealous. How about Brian? Why don't you go next?
Yes. Hey, everyone. Brian Novak here. I am Managing Director and CFO with ISOS Group. It is ISOS, or we are a sustainability consultancy based here in San Diego, but really we're a remote organization. We work in a couple different areas. We have training and education, so we offer training in some of the leading sustainability reporting standards. We offer some traditional consulting to organizations of all types and sizes around setting strategy and reporting on sustainability progress. And also do some work in assurance. So as organizations are reporting their emissions publicly, we can then go in and verify that what they're reporting and what they're capturing is correct. A little on my background is I studied in business and spent some time working in finance and accounting, and actually have an interesting sort of connection in terms of industry with Mavis, where I spent several years in China working in fashion manufacturing. And it was actually the exposure there and understanding what organizations can do, like Mavis's organization, in controlling and better managing the materials that they're using and the supply chain that they're using, and kind of opened my eyes a bit. So came back to the States. I have a master's in environmental policy and sustainability from UCSD here, and been working with ISO's group for about 2-3 years now. Excited to be here and excited to talk a little bit more. And yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Brian. And last but not least, Laurel.
Yes, hi, I'm Laurel Glass of A Stellar Co. I'm co-founder with Jessa Spainhour, who's on this. I'm sure you got to connect with her in your breakout groups. We launched A Stellar Co. about a year ago after graduating the Tory Project Incubator for Stakeholder Capitalists, and we were the first cohort. And just a quick plug, yeah, Tory Project operates on the trust model. And what that means is we didn't pay a dime, but we committed, I think it was about a little over 64 hours together learning about stakeholder capitalism, business as a force for good, what B Corp certification means, and all sorts of different types of sustainable business models. And we are proud to report that we have many clients, and many of those clients, some of them are here today, and many of them have committed to also updating their business models to also be sustainable and give back. So it's working, it's happening. Our business is verified, and we have a pending B Corp certification. Yay, hopefully we get to achieve it, fingers crossed. We got to do all our reporting that I know Brian is really, really good at. I'm a little bit connected to Brian in the past because I am a professional sustainability manager. I worked for public and private agencies and corporations in long-range sustainability planning, which includes annual reporting on greenhouse gas emissions reductions, strategies, and metrics. On the waste side, the built environment and transportation side, energy, water, wastewater, agriculture, open space, all sorts of different resource areas. And I've also worked in ecological design firms. So the super scientific technical folks that place a particular plant in a particular place to perform a particular function. So biological functions and values. And I got here because I graduated the University of San Diego, ole, 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 with a degree in environmental studies and economics in the Great Recession of 2008. Jessa loves to give me a little wink and a joke because my very first job after graduating is I was a paid sewer rat. I collected water samples in the storm drains of San Diego, National City Marine Terminal, SDG&E, rail yards, all sorts of different places, and worked my way up from a marine scientist to a land use and environmental planner to a CEQA NEPA expert for you compliance nerds out there, and onto a sustainability manager, and finally a co-founder with Jessa at A Stellar Co. And each of us both have 2 jobs on top of that. So we are just passionate about regenerative entrepreneurship, sustainable businesses, and overall, I think if you want to summarize a Stellar Co., it's we help people do business without being a dick.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining us, Laurel. I'm so excited that we have such a experienced and diverse panel. A lot of different backgrounds here, all equally passionate. And so I guess very briefly, this isn't about me, but just so you get context of why I'm even here talking. So I'm Isabel Wen. Probably like many of you, I'm very new to regenerative and sustainability. And, you know, this whole thing was personal exploration partially of like, what does that mean? And every person I talk to, it's a different definition. And then Laurel and Jessa introduced me to regenerative. I'm like, oh man, there's a whole new term. And also, you know, trying to find other people, what it means to them, and just trying to make it easier to find other people. Like, so in the exploration of creating Next San Diego, which we just started about a few weeks ago, I was talking to like Jessa and Laurel and Mavis and Brian. I think even before COVID, actually, Brian and I had originally connected on this topic. So it's kind of funny that like, you know, after COVID, it's like a rocket ship, right? Like everyone is like, what is this? How do I do more? And so we created Next San Diego, small group of people who are just, yeah, like it's kind of hard to find other people who really care about this and are actually doing something. And, you know, for people who maybe like me, a little bit more skeptical initially of like, did I just join a cult? Like, is this too, like, this is too positive, right? This is kind of scary. Are there like real tangible things that people are doing? Has it worked? And the answer is yes. This is not new. This has been around since human beings have been around. It's just been invisible for some reason. But there, you know, that being said, it's not new, but there is a new resurgence, right? A new movement, a new impetus, snowball going forward right now. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm talking. That's why I brought these wonderful people to talk and share about their stories. So enough about me. So with that topic, I think wanted to dig in, you know, for each of you, Mavis, Brian, and Laurel, kind of like what is, you know, for you, what happened? Can you guys hear me? Okay, I have a message saying I was muted. So what is sustainability and what is regenerative? You know, especially, I want to kind of maybe throw this in there too, the subject of greenwashing that comes up a lot. So just kind of, what are your thoughts on that?
I can maybe jump in to start, and I do have to admit that I hadn't been too familiar with regenerative either until actually speaking with Laurel, speaking with Jessa on with the Stellar Co. The work that we do is typically with larger private organizations, you know, publicly traded companies that are putting together sustainability plans and reports and reporting things out annually. They're getting pressure from a lot of different sources. But one of the first things that we do is we try to have that discussion and what they define as sustainability and what it means to them, because to each organization, it's something different. And it should be something different. An organization's impacts and who they're impacting and how they're impacting the environment that they operate in is always different. That all said, one of the definitions that we bring in talking about sustainability, and I'm going to read here because I don't know it by heart, although I should, is the Brundtland Commission. This is back in 1987's definition of sustainability. It's sustainable development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And then as the more I was thinking about regenerative and thinking about the word sustainability and that definition, sustainability started to now feel like something around conservation or maintenance or sort of protection, where regenerative speaks a little bit more about growth and improvement and empowerment. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just environmentally focused either, but the people that are impacted and all the stakeholders of an organization. So that it was interesting, and I'm excited to continue thinking about it and talking about it, because there's a lot of different words and terminology out there, but it continues to evolve. So sustainability today means something different than it did 5 years ago, and it's going to mean something different 5 years from now. But just thinking about things through those lenses, it's exciting to think about, talk about, and a place to be in as well.
I can jump next. So speaking as Mavis Viara, what means sustainability? It's very simple. For me, it's like take care of nature and nature takes care of you. That's something that I learned through my years of traveling and living in the outdoors natures. And if you see nature, if something goes against it by itself, it regenerates and becomes better. It rebuilds itself and it keeps going constantly. When it comes to sustainable, as Mavis Viara, the business part, it's about doing something that's good for the environment, it's good for the community, being very honest with yourself, checking production, where your product is coming, who is behind your product, be ethical. And when it comes to regenerative, the way that we're doing right now, it's kind of like addressing, like to bring the potential rather than just existing. It's like bring something more that regenerates. For example, right now for every bag purchase, what we're doing, I'm supporting entrepreneur women in developing countries where we give them a loan, help them in their business, help them with their business, they repay the loan, and then we use that money and pass it to another entrepreneur that we're supporting. So that's kind of regenerative. For the people behind the bags who make the bags, and we're helping to develop their economy. So by creating more jobs and focus there and come out of poverty. So maybe their generation didn't went to college, but their next generation, because they're evolving, they're gonna continue with education and continue to evolve, and that's how you help them succeed. So that's like my point of view when it comes to sustainable and regenerative.
Love that you're doing that.
I mean, Mavis is inspiring, and we're grateful to be partners with Mavis. When we first interviewed her on our podcast, Mavis, and you said, take care of nature and she takes care of you, I was just like, I mean, that's just the best way of describing it for me. And to Brian's point about, definitions, as a land use and environmental planner and land developer, the Brundtland Commission was like the first way of describing sustainable development, where, you don't compromise the needs of tomorrow by using up all the resources today. And that was focused on like natural resources and how that goes into developing the built environment. And then in the early 90s, people took the sustainable development definition and kind of translated it more to a financial or accounting system. And that's when John Elkington coined the phrase as the triple bottom line. So businesses were going to make decisions on not only financially that would maximize their profit, but also in a way that looks at the environmental bottom line and the social equity or people bottom line. So people sometimes summarize that as people, planet, profit. And that was probably the easiest way that I describe sustainability. You think about it as the three things. I mean, at a Stellar Co, we summarize everything into three because I can't just digest anything more than that. And the people, planet, and profit just resonates really strongly with us. So we take it a step further through our education at the Torrey Project, where we learned about stakeholder capitalism and stakeholder theory, about how you generate value for your stakeholders, not just maximize profit for your shareholders. And that to me was how you take care of your people component. And as a environmental professional, I know how to take care of the environmental component. That's just hardwired in my brain. You know, you can go down the technical route with Brian's group. You can do some personal consumer behavioral change. You can do all sorts of stuff to minimize your environmental footprint. And then the profit stuff is really fun because it's a nod to the business for good movement, where you can make profit without sacrificing having a positive contribution to people and the planet. And that is when I started to learn about regenerative capitalism or regenerative business. So when I think about sustainability, it's like maintaining the status quo and being long-term decision-making and being resilient in the face of change and being able to quickly return back to equilibrium or balance from like an ecological perspective and in a business perspective. And then regenerative is when you're adding value in every step of your supply chain, or adding value to all of your stakeholders, just like Mother Nature does. Nothing gets wasted. You know, the detritus, the organic matter that needs to be decomposed, that is food and fuel for everything else. So it's really a zero waste system that breeds life. And then when you take the definition of regenerative capitalism, if you want to look it up at the capitalinstitute.org, I think it came out maybe like 8 to 10 years ago or something, but it's like, it blew my mind and now I see it everywhere. It's, you apply the principles of healthy living systems, including the ecology and humans, to business. So instead of humans performing a particular function and particular role in the business, and they must stay in that lane and they must do these things, they can behave more like organic organisms, where we're collaborative and interactive and fluid, and we create and regenerate and add value and go where we need to go and go with our feelings and do what feels good, because it will end up as the ultimate good. So, I mean, for some people, it can get super hippy dippy and weird. So like, it depends on your audience. Like when we were first launching a Stellar Co. and we were having some traditional capitalist mentors, and we'd be like, oh, we're regenerative business planners. They're like, can't help you. No one's going to understand what you're doing. And we had it up on our website, and we had a local B Corp comment that they were so proud and excited that we had regenerative business on our website. And I was like, oh, I got to take it down because nobody understands it, and like people don't get it, and blah, blah, blah. And I hate to tell you, I kind of regret taking it down, because boom, here we are, next San Diego. This whole conversation is happening. And so for me, there can be a really technical definition of sustainability. I like to summarize it: people, planet, profit. Regenerative are ones that add value to stakeholders throughout the supply chain, including a positive impact on the environment. And we at a Stellar Co., our sustainable or regenerative business model is 3% for good. It's a triple top line. So we donate top line revenue instead of bottom. Top line revenue to people, planet, and profit programs.
Awesome. I don't know if you guys got like feelings from that, but I was just like, wow, yeah, nodding. Yes. Like I love that you talk about, like, because I heard about this from someone else too the other day. Like it came up recently. I was at, I think it was the Eco Rotary Club for Encinitas. And they had a speaker who was talking, she's like a local architect, I think. I can't remember the name of the firm. I think it was Miller Hall. But anyway, she was talking about the Living Building Challenge and pedal certification. So if you're not familiar, which I'm not, I assume most people aren't, instead of like LEED, so it's like sustainable, right? And like it's a point system or whatever. Again, it's not about maintaining, a flat balance, but, giving back and creating more life, like Laurel is saying. So check it out. And then I think the last thing you're talking about, applying like ecological systems into business, I think, is that permaculture? I think I've heard it a few times.
It's very similar. A lot of people do mention permaculture, because permaculture is like just the holistic permeation of ecological systems into all parts of life. Like it's just, the only way that I can describe permaculture is like all. I don't know.
Like yeah.
But like now you're going to see it pop up everywhere, but the regenerative, or applying the principles of healthy living systems to the economy, is there's a woman we just met, Dr. Tamsin Woolley Barker. Everybody look her up. She's awesome. We're going to interview her on our podcast soon. But she is teaching kids about this. And she's written one book, and one's coming out like nowish, about how business leaders should set up their businesses to behave more like ecological systems in the collaborative approach, instead of the more rigid, formal, traditional way of I'm a junior planner, planner 1, planner 2, planner 3, planner 4, manager, director, you know, on and on and on and on. And just to comment on that quickly, that's kind of where I thought I was supposed to do that when I graduated. Go from junior up to director. And I did that, and somewhere along the way, I lost the understanding of what my passion was. I was doing a bunch of ecological work and a bunch of environmental restoration, and I was like, shouldn't I be like really happy right now? And I wasn't. And that's because I was in a box, and I meant to be free and wild. And, you know, being with Jessa at Stellar Co., we get to be free and wild, and that's entrepreneurship gives you those opportunities to make those decisions, to say, I'm going to be a regenerative business. This is how I'm going to give back. And giving back and making that part of your business model, that is fulfilling. It's like you're a truly healthy organism.
I'm seeing some comments in the chat. That was a lot to digest, but great.
Sorry, I'm going to zip it for a little while. You guys chime in.
It's okay. That's why we have this on recording. You can watch it again. So yeah, I think that's a really great subject to kind of segue into the next discussion. I think is, you know, having kind of defined a little bit. I know, Mavis, you touched on a little bit, you know, like what you do with empowering Indigenous women to be entrepreneurs, but to expand a little bit more for each of you, like what are you doing in your business or your personal life to kind of embody these principles for you? So like maybe I'll some examples, right? Like I put a lot of examples in the event description, and you know, not necessarily everyone is doing all those things. It would be great to get there. It's kind of a mountain to tackle at once, right? It's like pretty radical change from, you know, what we were been like Laurel was saying, like, you know, level 1, level 2, level 3, and then director, and then, you know, VP or whatever. But you know, things like a worker cooperative, looking at the suppliers that you work with, that they're sustainable and regenerative, as you know, as much as possible, right? Like there is some transparency issues sometimes, but that's kind of where Brian's company comes in with the reporting, or you know, transparency within your own organization, internally and externally. You know, like why are decisions made a certain way, how people are paid and why they're paid that much, etc.
Yeah, I can maybe jump in here. So as ISOS Group, and I had forgot to mention earlier, so ISOS Group is a certified B Corp. So Laurel, excited for you to, we're joining ranks soon. We're a benefit corporation here in San Diego. I'm sorry, here in California. And then when we share that with people, a lot of people say, oh, you're a nonprofit, but there's a, you know, kind of legal entity to be a benefit corporation where it sort of eliminates some of the argument from traditional corporations where say, well, the purpose of our business is to create value for our shareholders. But this benefit corporation, which is not a legal entity yet in every state, but in several, in most, the purpose of the organization is also to create a public benefit. So ours is to drive transparency, to create positive change, environmental and social change. And we're also a women-owned business, and we're a small business. And what the B Corp certification really did for us was help us to identify some of the areas where we felt as a micro organization, really, that we could have some of the biggest impact over the areas where we can control. The suppliers that we work with, you know, we're not buying a lot of goods for our to manage our business, But if we are making purchases or if we are looking for service providers, to make sure that selection process is a conscious process. We're looking at other small businesses. We're looking at local businesses, diverse ownership, veteran-owned businesses. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. And I would say another aspect is in the training and education space. So we started in 2008, and sustainability reporting, as we kind of know it now, was a bit different. A lot of organizations were sharing their volunteer hours and the amount of money that they were donating, but it's really evolved into something more strategic and more integrated into the organization's strategy. But we started in 2008 training on those standards that, okay, the focus, those things are great, and there's value and there's a need for that, but sustainability should be more integrated in your company strategy. So the standard that we apply is the Global Reporting Initiative, or GRI. There's several standards across economic, environmental, and social topics. But I'm talking about this because something that we try to do also in our work is to educate the people that we're engaging with and speaking to and working with. We're almost bad consultants in that way because we're sort of teaching away our need, but it's something that we find important, and we've found that it helps to kind of elevate our work and continue to progress things forward. And we found that to be something great. And I would say one of the last elements as well is just kind of the local engagement. So we're based really in different parts of the country, but here in San Diego, we try to participate in the San Diego Green Building Council. There's a great organization in downtown San Diego, which is Business for Good, which we're a member of. I joined the Climate Reality Project, which came out of Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth, which I'm a member of, and there's so many organizations out there doing great things, and just being able to speak, and just like today, being able to speak, interact with, and this is where new ideas come from. This is where new partnerships are made, and just being active in the community.
Awesome. Wow. Mavis?
So I will share with you how I started my journey of Maddies Viara, right? Because I just left my corporate job 2-week notice, and I was going to move to Vietnam for 6 months to do a business development project where they were going to pay me with food and shelter. And ended up staying here in San Diego and started Maddies Viara. Completely opposite vision that I had in mind. So people ask me, like, why in the fashion industry? You're just an outdoor person. You like to go camping outdoors. And it really got my attention because I used to work in the fashion industry after I graduated from college. And it was very shocking to see how bad the fashion industry is polluting our world. Like 78% of the pounds of textiles goes to waste. That's 78%. That's the average per person. And then you have the water pollution. Like, you have a lot of toxic waste water that's going to our landfills. It's feeding our fish. And that's pretty much the food that we're eating. So it's coming back to us. And then you think about it, like, with all the chemicals to do the coloring, the dyes and everything, there's also 750 million people who don't have access to clean water. And actually, I experienced that because where I grew up in San Quintin in Baja California, there's no water. So every time I go there, I have to visit my parents. Guess how I have to shower? With a bucket of water, I warm it up. So you really think about those situations, and being exposed really catch my attention. Like, water is so important. And that's like one of my biggest concerns. And not only that, you go on the production side and you're buying a garment at very low cost. And those are red flags. It's not to say like, oh, this jacket is $20, it's so cheap. Well, you need to ask yourself, like, where is it coming? Who's making that jacket? How's the production? you see a lot of child labor that it's kind of like the modern slavery. And not only that, there's like human traffic too. There's being forced labor and those production manufacturers that you as the company, you go there, you meet the owners and you think that they're legit, they're right. And actually there's not. There's a reason why the cost is way too low. So those are red flags that you really need to take in consideration. So when I started Mavis Viara, people were like, why don't you go on marketing? Why don't, like, after 2 months, like, start? I was like, no, I spent literally, and I'm still working on this side, 10 months on my production side. I wanted to make sure where my product was coming. I choose the recycling companies. I met the owners, their people, every little employee in that recycling company. I know their names, I know their age, I know if they like their job or not, and if they not, like what are they doing there? I get to meet them on a personal level. And I want to make sure that how many plastic bottles will make one of my bags. If it's really recycled, how they do the coloring, like how long it takes, like all those little aspects. I spent like a month learning about recycling materials and upcycle. And then the people behind the bags, how the waving, who are they, and like what's their name? Again, like I really, really get to know them. And because I want to make sure that my company is transparent. And not only that, like to know that I'm doing something right, because that was my purpose. I wanted to start something with a meaningful purpose that will give back. And actually we're doing something sustainable in the fashion industry. So I started this to actually go against the fashion. Like we don't have like 24 collections during the year. Right now we have 12 different models of bags. And everything is handmade. It takes 5 days. I don't do mass production. You can order one, like pre-order, and it will take you probably like 3 weeks to get your bag. But trust me, it's gonna be the way it's being made. It's sustainable and it's ethical. Because that's another aspect. I wanna make sure my people who worked under Mavis Viara, they're being paid well. And I get to know them. And that's kind of what I love about this business. It's, yes, you get to make your own rules, but it's not about that. It's about, I get to decide decisions that are good for the environment and good for our community. That I know that this bag is not gonna affect the nature, that we're taking care of it. And that's my inspiration between the bags. So it's very important to know, like, get to know where your product is coming, how long it takes, like really like question your vendors. Like I always say, we as consumers, we have the power, and that's powerful, like Laurel mentioned, that's powerful enough. Like we have the choice, and we are like, just think about this, like we are the heroes on this. And you as a hero, you can decide to choose to do good for this environment by your purchasing decisions. You have the right, and that's powerful. That's amazing. That's something that no one can take away from you. So I always invite people, be your own hero, and as your hero, act for it, go for it, earn it. Like you have it inside of you.
Thank you, Mavis. Inspirational as always. And also, if you don't know, Mavis directly employs indigenous artisans, indigenous women in Mexico and Oaxaca and Michoacan. Super, super cool. She has a huge heart. Check out her website. She also helps kids in need too. And yeah, on the subject of like consumerism, and I want to let Laurel speak too. I'm not moving the subject yet. On the subject of the consumer, you know, having the power, I think that is like a whole nother hour or two of discussion that we would love to touch on in Next San Diego. And so I know we have some people here, you know, from different certified B Corps and other certifications. There's a new one, social enterprise certification as well. And so that's why transparency is really important because, you know, we kind of mentioned the subject of greenwashing. So there is a lot of marketing, people saying that they're doing these things, but without, you know, third-party auditing and without legal ramifications, there's no way for you to really verify and know that. Like you as a consumer, even you as a business consumer, right, B2B, you're not going to spend, I don't know how many hours researching on one particular company that's private that's not going to share that information, right? So you kind of rely on these certifications and legal entity statuses for now to make sure people are actually doing what they're saying. But yeah, Laurel, I do want to hear from you. What are you guys doing at A Stellar Co. to kind of embody regenerative?
Yeah, we, aside from our 3% for Good business model, our founder's story includes firstly, setting up our culture. What we learned at Tory Project was culture trumps everything. That's Dr. Gustavo, if you want to look it up. Dr. Gustavo, I just typed it in. Um, if if you don't have a solid culture and core values from which to filter your business decisions, you can make a bunch of money but end up being lost. You can attract clients that don't align with you, that pay you a bunch of money but don't make you feel good. You can attract supply chain vendors that don't support you during COVID. When something's gone awry, like who do you want to stand up for you and love you? And I mean, that's when we get to that hippy dippy stuff. It's all about love. I mean, I like to refer back to Dr. Bronner's whenever I can, because they're a local B Corp and the world's third most successful one. And they believe that we're all one. The all one ethos permeates everything, and they just so happen to make soap. And I feel like at A Stellar Co., our culture, which we on brand named Polaris, our North Star or guiding light, it includes 5 core values, one of which is accountability, or it's the same thing as transparency. But accountability to us means that I'm going to hold Jessa accountable when she's committed to something, but then also respect when she knows what's best for her. And she's going to hold me accountable when I've committed to something. And we sell accountability partnerships. So when you're trying to set up your business to be sustainable and transparent, we help hold you accountable to that. When you set up your strategic plan to be a business for good, to have a sustainable business model, to contribute top line revenue, or have a buy one, give one business model, we hold you accountable to that in a loving and friendly way, of course, because we're all in this together. And that, you know, that transparency comes back to the stakeholder theory and stakeholder capitalism of every stakeholder in your business is very important, very important. And you can create value for them without sacrificing, you know, value for your shareholders as well. So my advice when you talk about transparency, or you're researching corporations that maybe aren't as transparent as ISO's group would have them be about their sustainability reporting, and they're not meeting their, you know, their global sustainability reporting initiatives or ISOs or all the other things, is like, if they're not telling you something, I would be skeptical of that. Firstly, I would be skeptical if people aren't being open and honest with what they need, what they have, what they want, and what they can give. They either don't know, so they're not self-aware, they're hiding something, so you can't trust them, or they're fearful. They're fearful that there's not enough abundance and prosperity to go around in the world, and we just don't believe that. We believe that there's enough work for everyone. So like Brian said earlier, we're kind of putting ourselves out of a job. I mean, that would be ideal. Like if we're transparent and accountable and we live our core values and we do our passion and we're part of a regenerative culture, regenerative business culture, we're going to end up putting ourselves out of a business. Like I'm not going to have long-term clients. I'll have long-term relationships, but these clients, I want to be able to set them up and go free and be themselves. And so at the end of the day, I mean, if you call up A Stellar Co., we'll probably give you everything you want. And if we don't know it, someone we know does, and we're not afraid to direct you to somebody that can give you what you need. So take-home messages is transparency is absolutely key in everything, because if somebody's hiding something, we should be very concerned about that. And then also I wanted to mention that if somebody is 100% confident in something, I wouldn't trust that either, because nobody's 100% confident in anything. And part of holding ourselves accountable is saying when we don't know something, and I just don't know. And that's fine.
Totally. So with that, I think we're kind of coming to the close of the hour. Maybe want to transition to the next subject, or the last subject of the evening before we say goodnight. So I know that was a lot to take in for most of the people here, I'm assuming. So maybe what are your thoughts on something practical that the audience can do? Whether they're a business owner, an intrapreneur. If you never heard that, it's, acting like your own business unit within the company, but you're not the CEO or the founder. Or, just a regular person. Like what can they do to be more regenerative in their own lives?
I feel like I want to pop in here quickly. We narrow it down to three things. The way that you can be a regenerative business is every single day, set habits or priorities in this order. Firstly, I'm going to do something that takes care of myself. That's your personal habit or your personal goal that you're going to do first every single day. Then secondly, accomplish a priority or a habit or task that takes care of your relationships. And that looks different for different people. It could be your marriage, your family, your kids, your best friend, your dog, whatever it is, your social relationships. And then after that, then accomplish your career goals or your career priorities. Because if you don't take care of yourself first, you certainly can't help other people. And if you don't take care of yourself and help other people, what's the point of even making any money? And you probably won't even be successful in making money anyway. Three things.
Amazing.
I maybe want to build off the first one in taking care of self. There's a lot of information out there, new information coming out every day, and being aware of what's going on and sort of staying informed and educating yourself is something that's important, but also not being, I almost want to say, not being so hard on yourself, like, oh my God, and every single decision needs to go through the complete due diligence process, and how is this going to be perceived, and can I do, and then you can't do anything. So I think it's just something to consider is, intentions do mean something. Be kind to yourself, and the rest will sort of follow, as Laurel had said. I guess I want to say, we talked a little bit about greenwashing and some of the key principles, and not to get everything back to reporting, but some of the key principles in reporting are the transparency and balance. So we have had conversations in the past with clients that we're not ready to talk about this yet because we're not doing it well enough. And it's interesting how much can be related to individuals as well. Like, oh, I don't want to talk about it yet because I'm not doing it well. That's almost something to consider, and to be maybe the devil's advocate a bit, but these organizations, they could have 5 people, 5,000 people, 50,000 people. They're also big ships to move. To maybe have a little, to share a positive note, there's a lot of great things that are happening in a lot of these big organizations, and they are trying to create positive change, but it does take time to do. And I would say there's not a place for maybe greenwashing in the traditional sense in marketing and in labeling. But we do encourage organizations to speak a little forward looking in terms of what they're trying to accomplish. And it's sort of like goal setting and target setting. So I would say there is a little bit of a delicate balance there. And I don't know if greenwashing is the right word for what I'm thinking about, but there is some space to say these are things that we want to do or we're striving for. And that's all I have to say about that.
My advice, if you're a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're in college, it's like one that I will stick with me. It's like, be true to yourself, no matter what. Be true to yourself. 2, be your own hero. And 3, it's one that really stick to it. Be honest, because if you're not honest with yourself, you cannot be honest to the world around you. So those are my recommendations.
Amazing. and we actually finished early. That never happens. Wow. So we can spend the last 5 minutes, maybe discussing one more thing before we go into the breakout sessions. So if you are in the audience, go ahead and type in the chat to Sunila, which panelist you would like to join, and we'll get that ready for you at 7:30. So one other topic, I think maybe I don't even know if we can fit this in 5 minutes. It's slightly controversial. I know previously, like the panelists, you and I, we did kind of discuss this idea of being sustainable is a privilege. And I've been kind of mulling it over a little bit. Like I'm a little bit late to the game, started reading Winners Take All by Anand G. I can't pronounce his last name. Really cool book. Check it out. So, but yeah, we're kind of talking about that. So, initially I was like, oh yeah, that, maybe kind of makes sense of like, yes, these eco products are a little bit more expensive. They cost what they're supposed to cost, but maybe some people don't make enough income to support, buying more sustainable products throughout the day and things like that. But then, I think Jessa kind of said, it's that's not necessarily true, right? And I've heard this before from someone else. I can't remember her name, but she started the Brisbane Tool Library in Australia. It's a lending library for power tools. And the idea is you can't just be sustainable by making and buying more sustainable stuff, more green stuff, like making stuff better. But you can actually be very sustainable by just using less stuff and reusing stuff, right? So, but obviously that's not a very good marketing campaign to sell things. So that's probably why you never really hear it. So just, yeah, maybe some couple thoughts there.
I would say thinking about, I mean, to bring it into like waste, zero waste, the first R is reduce. So I mean, that's something certainly that there's some parallel there. And I would agree that, we're definitely in a consumer driven society. There's power there and that decision-making ability. I worked with a lot of big U.S. brands that were manufacturing goods in Asia and in China. And to Mavis, what your point was saying, I mean, it was crazy because there used to be 2 fashion cycles, and then it turned into 4, then 6, and now it's like, the fast fashion is every 2 weeks something new is coming out. So I think just that reduces something that it doesn't take much to think about some of those decisions, and almost thinking about things from that waste perspective. Those 5 R's could be a way for a decision making process too.
Yeah, and I think Jess and I were just having this conversation not even a few hours ago with some PhD biologists and ecologists who are leading the state in these conversations around sustainability as a privilege. And the only thing that I can do first is just acknowledge that I'm a white privileged woman. And it's only and I came from sustainability from like a deeply technical background of environmental compliance with law. So that is where I was thinking about it, where you don't really have a choice. You either comply or you get sued and you pay a bunch of fines and fees. And it's only until recently when my, white privilege has been brought back into my face, and I realized like I have this job, I earn so I can give. I earn and I give, and money is just the flow of energy. And that's all it is. So when we think about money and transactions and consumerism and all of and sustainability around the financial transaction of things and choice being constrained by financials, I think Jessa is nodding with me in agreement to go back to the hierarchy of needs and just do your absolute best to ensure that every person has the basic needs. That is where sustainability starts, in my opinion. And all this compliance stuff that I lived in, and me buying my reusable things and me buying this and that, and I just bought and bought and bought and bought and bought. Well, I'm changing that behavior, and I'm earning so I can just give it and help people have their basic needs met, because I was just born into this privilege.
And for me, talking in the fashion industry, it's the way I see it, like every brand, they try to sell you who you should be instead of who you are. So if you own who you are and it really comes from the inside, that you know that you're one of a kind and you're like just one in this planet, and that's the best thing, you don't need to own to be something that you're not are, that any brand out there is trying to sell you, that if you're not wearing this or if you're not wearing this new trend or something, you're no one, because actually you're more than that. And just buy like the things that you need. I always say like, don't buy my bag if you don't need one, but if you need one, okay, check this out. They're made of recycled plastic and they're good for different qualities, right? But always like know who you are, and that's powerful enough to say no and to buy a lot of stuff. I mean, that's the power when it comes to sustainability.
Amazing. Wow. So again, we're on time. How are we doing this? All right, so I'm gonna stop the recording. So goodbye, YouTube audience. We'll hopefully see you at a future next San Diego event.